Do you remember the excitement you had the first time you watched that teaser trailer for Thor Love and Thunder? Sweet Child O' Mine filled your ears as you realized that one of our OG6 Avengers is getting another solo film to come save us amongst the controversial recent releases of Phase 4 films. You pre-bought your tickets as the trailers continued to look amazing. It truly looked like a sequel to the movie we all loved, Ragnarok. You sit down in your seat on opening night, popcorn in hand, and as the movie begins to play out, you are utterly disappointed and your night is completely ruined. If your experience was anything like mine, this is probably what you went through. I don't even want to say that Thor Love and Thunder is one of the most polarizing MCU films of all time, because honestly, I think most people agree. It was bad. Like, really bad. But I wanted to give it a second chance. In this series, we're going to take a look back on superhero films, and as we go through the movie, we're going to take a deeper dive on how the movie was received when it first came out, and if those same opinions still hold true after time passes or as more movies release. Or if time can give us a new perspective and change some of our thoughts as we look at these films in retrospect. Let's begin. Starting off, we meet our villain for the film, Gorr the God Butcher, played by Christian Bale. Gorr is with his daughter stranded in some kind of desert without any food or water. He begins to pray to his god for help for his daughter as they struggle to survive. Help from the gods never come, and he sadly has to bury his daughter in the sand as she passes away. He hears a voice coming from an island that he walks to find fresh water and fruit along with Rapu, the god that Gorr prayed to and called himself one of his disciples to. Rapu laughs in Gorr's face for thinking there was an eternal reward waiting for him. This entire opening scene is actually one of the best and most serious scenes in the movie. This was a great way to start the film and introduce Gorr, but unfortunately, it's all downhill from here. Gorr is tempted by a voice that raises the Necro Sword, whose previous owner was just vanquished according to Rapu, and tells him to get revenge. Gorr grabs the Necro Sword and drives it right into Rapu's neck, marking his first god kill, and unfortunately, the only one we really see on screen. My main problem with Gorr throughout this film is that we get told many times how many gods he's killing, but never really showed. Gorr himself doesn't even have that much screen time in this film. I mean, you got Christian Bale to play such a cool villain that had an amazing comic run with Thor written by Jason Aaron and don't even show him killing any of the gods? Just wasted potential, man. Although Gorr's still great when he is on screen. After Gorr vows to kill all gods, we check in on Thor's life after Endgame while Korg narrates it. Thor gets called for help in the battle that the Guardians are facing. It's nice seeing the Guardians again in this film, even if it's just for a short amount of time. This scene can be fun, especially when you're in a big theater watching Thor kick ass while Welcome to the Jungle is blaring in your ears. But Taika Waititi's over-the-top silliness in this film shines as Thor rides Stormbreaker into battle like he's Daniel Radcliffe, and then does the split kicks in the middle of his fight. We then transition to the returning Jane Foster, who hasn't been seen since Thor the Dark World all the way back in 2013. We also get 2 quick cameos from Darcy and Dr. Selvig. It's revealed to us that she has stage 4 cancer and is currently going through chemo. This is directly inspired from the Mighty Thor comic run where Jane also had cancer and took on the mantle of Thor. However, the story is quite different from the comics. I actually think of all things in the film, Jane's battle with cancer is one of the more well done parts of the film. It knows what it's dealing with is very serious and portrays it in that way. Paradise City starts playing and we pay a visit to New Asgard, which we last saw in Avengers Endgame back in 2019. Jane is here and is standing in front of Mjolnir, which was destroyed back in Thor Ragnarok by Hela. Mjolnir begins to shake as lightning forms in the clouds. Coming back to Thor now, he's gifted 2 screaming goats for his help with their battle. We have a couple funny moments back on the Milano between the Guardians and Thor. The way they play off each other comedically was one of my favorite parts of Infinity War, and I'm glad we got it again here, although it was very brief. They receive a distress call about Gorr's killing spree. Thor recognizes his friend Sif and hurries out to help her. The Guardians and Thor say their goodbyes after Peter Quill and Thor have an actually pretty heartfelt conversation about loss and how the shitty feeling of losing someone you love is better than never having anyone or that empty feeling. Thor has obviously lost a lot in his past, practically everyone, his mother, father, his best friend, and his brother a couple of times. The Guardians head off to Volume 3, and Thor, Korg, and the goats head out to find Sif. They find her next to a dead Falagar. She tells Thor about Gorr and his plan of extinction of all gods, and tells him that Asgard is next. This is one of the most infuriating scenes in the entire movie for me, and was when I realized what I was in for the rest of this film. Sif is one of Thor's long-lived best friends, and has just had her arm cut clean off and is clearly on the brink of death, and instead of some sort of heartfelt interaction, it gets turned into a joke about her not getting into Valhalla because she didn't technically die in battle. Moments like these are why I understand the hate this movie receives. Getting into some positive, back on New Asgard, we get a beautifully creepy scene of Gorr stalking the village in the dead of the night. He plunges the Necro Sword into the ground and unleashes shadow monsters on New Asgard. Valkyrie and Thor quickly arrive to help out. The action scenes here are great. Jane is revealed to have Mjolnir now as Thor and Jane get reunited, and then we get a flashback sequence showing their relationship and the reason why Mjolnir put itself back together for Jane. It was to protect her.
I need you to promise me you'll always protect her.
Thor and Jane's relationship spiraled downwards due to the fear of loss from both of them, until one night Jane up and left. Their relationship is actually one of the strong points of this film and something I will keep defending as the movie progresses, but we'll get there. Thor catches his first glimpse of Gorr and we get our first fight between the two of them. Gorr backs off and starts kidnapping the Asgardian children before disappearing. Parents are panicking in New Asgard and Thor makes a promise to bring the children back. Stormbreaker's jealousy of Mjolnir's return stops him from going by himself. This is another one of those scenes where I just think they went over the top with the goofiness. The interactions in this film between our crew here almost sound like a parody film. Either that or they were written by a 12-year-old. Heimdall's son, Astrid, is able to use his powers to project himself in front of them and help Thor find out where they are. Our heroes make a plan to strap Stormbreaker down to power a ship and head out, goats included. They make their way to Zeus in search for some help to take down Gorr. They arrive at the Golden Temple surrounded by different gods, from the god of magic to the god of dreams and even the god of dumplings. Zeus makes his grand entrance and Thor catches his attention. Thor tells everyone about Gorr and his plan to kill all gods and asks for help, but is shut down by this not-so-serious take on Zeus as he gets stripped in front of the entire crowd. Zeus tells Thor that they are all safe here and not to worry about Gorr. He also reveals that Gorr is trying to reach eternity, a very powerful being at the center of the universe that will grant the desire of the first person that reaches it. Eternity is one of the most powerful things in Marvel Comics, and it's kind of insane that we even get to see him in this film at all. Gorr is trying to reach eternity to wish for all gods to die. However, Zeus isn't worried because he claims he doesn't have the key. This entire sequence is actually one of the good parts of the film where jokes land, and I actually did find kind of humorous. Definitely made me laugh a little bit in theaters. Zeus orders Thor to be killed, which starts a badass battle in the middle of the Golden Temple, another great action sequence. At least this film has that. Korg is hit with Zeus's thunderbolt, which enrages Thor. As he flies towards him, he catches it and flings it back at Zeus, leaving a hole in his chest as he falls to the ground. The goats are called and the crew takes off, with Sweet Child of Mine starting up. More positive incoming. The Guns N' Roses soundtrack is great to hear throughout this film, and the goats are another gig that for some reason for me just landed. Every time I heard them screaming, I was dying in the theater. I can definitely understand why some people despised it though. Thor later checks in on the kids and ensures them that help is on the way. A little while after, Thor does a shitty job of telling Jane how he feels about her, only for Jane to reveal that she has cancer to him. This entire scene, again, is another really well done one, serious conversation as they recoup their relationship after a heartfelt conversation about Jane's cancer and their fear of loss from each other. This continues to be the strongest part of the film so far, and I definitely feel like people overlook it when just straight shitting on this film. Before they know it, they are in the Shadow Realm, shown by a black and white picture change. Jane discovers that Stormbreaker is actually the key to reaching eternity and chucks him into space.
You tell me why you just threw Stormbreaker out the window.
He needs it to open the gates of eternity.
Gorr enters the room and entangles all three of them with ease. Gorr continues to be one of the best parts of this film. Every time he's on the screen, Christian Bale absolutely kills it. While demanding Thor to call back Stormbreaker, Valkyrie interrupts him and is now the star of the show. This interaction between Gorr and Valkyrie is genuinely terrifying and very well done as he taunts her with her past and the death of her girlfriend. I love the black and white direction here. It helps exaggerate the helplessness of our crew and the pure disparity state that Gorr is in. Gorr starts to kill Jane and Valkyrie, which forces Thor to call Stormbreaker and breaks all three of them free. Gorr surrounds them with shadow monsters and heads straight towards Thor for Stormbreaker. Jane and Valkyrie take care of the shadow monsters. It's pretty cool how Jane used Mjolnir to break apart and put back together to kill these creatures. Valkyrie goes head to head with Gorr using Thunderbolt, but Gorr gets the best of her and stabs her right in the back. Thor holds off Gorr with Stormbreaker and then calls for the Bifrost to take him home so Valkyrie can get some help. Right as they begin to be dragged up, Gorr pops up and takes Stormbreaker from Thor as they disappear back to Earth. Now that we're back on Earth, Jane no longer is connected to Mjolnir, and we discover that the reason Jane's cancer is getting worse is because every time she picks up Mjolnir, it stops her ability to fight the cancer. Jane tries to convince Thor to let her come with him to save the kids again, but Thor convinces her to stay so they can have a future together. The over-the-top and cringy jokes become less and less frequent now that the powerful relationship between Jane and Thor as she's battling cancer continues to shine here. Valkyrie hands over Thunderbolt to Thor and he's back on his way. Back in the Shadow Realm, Gorr begins to use Stormbreaker to open up the portal to Eternity. Thor shows up just in time to save the kids from a falling statue head. As Gorr notices, he sends more shadow monsters at all of them. After this, we have the most ridiculous scene in the entire movie. Thor rallies the kids with whatever weapons they can find, including rocks and teddy bears, and enchants all of their weapons with the power of Thor. I'm not going to sit here and completely shit on this scene, but I was definitely not a fan of it when I first watched this film, and I still think it's very ridiculous now. November Rain starts to play as the children charge into battle and go head to head with the monsters. Thor works his way over to Gorr, but gets his ass kicked without Stormbreaker. Jane can sense Thor losing the fight, and Mjolnir appears at her bed. She arrives just in time to save Thor as the reality of the situation sinks in for both of them. Thor attempts to destroy Stormbreaker, while Jane is ordered to destroy the Necro Sword as it'll kill Gorr. But as it starts to put itself back together, she realizes what she has to do. She calls down some lightning and destroys both the Necro Sword and Mjolnir, sealing her and Gorr's fate. Gorr manages to sneak his way through the portal that's now open to reach Eternity. Thor gives Gorr a speech about love and tells him that he has a chance to bring his daughter back with his wish. I really appreciate, again, that this entire scene does not have one joke. Gorr realizes the correct thing to do here and wishes for his daughter's return. In another and final really great scene between the two, Jane tells Thor to keep his heart open, and after one last kiss, she passes away into god dust. Gorr asks Thor to protect his daughter as he joins Jane in death. We cut back to Korg narrating life on New Asgard as we see Valkyrie training kids for fighting. Korg gets himself a rock boyfriend named Dwayne, and Thor is now taking on the role of a father with Gorr's daughter. Funny enough, Gorr's daughter is actually played by Chris Hemsworth's real-life daughter, which is actually really cool, and I'm sure was super exciting for Chris. She lets Thor know that she doesn't want his pancakes, and they begin to head out. Thor gets Mjolnir redesigned by his now adopted daughter, and she takes up Stormbreaker. They head out to Sweet Child of Mine playing, as Korg lets us know that they are now known by Love and Thunder. Credits start to roll, but as we all know, that's not the end of any Marvel movie. The first post-credit scene shows us that Zeus is actually still alive, and he's recruiting his son, Hercules, to go after Thor, setting up an amazing potential storyline. The second post-credit scene shows that Jane managed to make it into Valhalla after she passed and is reunited with Heimdall, Thor's best friend who died by the hands of Thanos back in Infinity War. And that's the film. Now, let's get into my summary about what we talked about. Overall, although some of the humor did land for me, I do think that this film had way too many jokes, and often placed in times where there didn't need to be one. Trust me, I didn't even come close to mentioning every single one as we went through this film. There was a lot more. Thor was okay as a lead character. If anything, it seemed like a step back from his character arc from Infinity War. However, where he did shine was with his relationship with Jane and how Taika handled the cancer storyline and her passing. It truly was the backbone of this movie, along with Gorr. He was great in all of the scenes. But again, I just wish we had more of him, and more of his god killing. Side characters were okay. I liked Valkyrie for the most part, but Korg was honestly a bit annoying in this one. I really do think this film gets too much hate, because looking back at it, you can find a lot of things in this film that were great and that I think were overshadowed just by how many jokes were put into this film, where again, it almost felt like a parody. That argument does still hold up though, and is definitely what still makes this film so polarizing. I will say though, in retrospect, after watching this film again almost a year later and reviewing it, my opinion has slightly changed. I still don't think it's a great movie by any means, but it's far from the worst MCU movie ever, which most people seem to title it. If I gave this movie a 4 out of 10 when it first released, I would now up it to maybe a 6 out of 10. What do you guys think? Were you disappointed when it first came out just like me? And how do you feel about it now? Let me know down below in the comments. I'd love to hear opinions from others. If this is a video you guys liked and want to see more of it on the channel, let me know and I'll gladly cover more superhero movies. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Peace.